February 3rd. We're in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi. A star high school athlete suddenly shows up to meet a guy in a parking lot. That guy is a bagman. The bagman hands this kid stacks of money in hundreds. It's $10,000. Swear to me on the life of your daughter, the bagman says. Tomorrow's National Signing Day and the commitments are due. His baby girl's only a year old, so he needs this money. They part ways, and then in the months that follow, the kid buys a car, uses cash, gives money to his mom to buy a house, uses cash. There's no paper trail. But one night, he does what a lot of high school kids do. He shoots an 8-second video of the cash, he puts it on Snapchat. And that changes everything. This is the story of Leo Lewis, a star teenage athlete from Mississippi who is about to commit to one of the colleges recruiting him. But to understand what happens to Leo, we have to start with the highly public sabotage of an NFL pro named Laremy Tunsil. It took me 5 years to answer some of these questions. Who sabotaged Laremy Tunsil?
It's a 5-year-long soap opera. You couldn't write it better.
What causes corruption in college sports?
Bombshell would be an understatement tonight in Oxford.
Why do players keep getting targeted?
There's been cheating in college sports since the dawn of time.
And what is a bagman?
Follow me down to Jordan Street. God's gonna trouble the water.
My name is Stephen Godfrey. I'm a senior reporter for SB Nation. My specialty is college football, but then the specialty inside of that is investigating various improprieties in the world of college football, sometimes the NFL too. In my time at SB Nation, I've reported on a sports memorabilia dealer's vengeful sabotage of a Heisman frontrunner from Georgia. I've embedded with the Tuscaloosa Police Department at the Iron Bowl, and later exposed the town's unusual practice of paying the $500,000 security bill. But my latest investigation is even bigger. My life for the last 5 years has been dedicated to reporting the destructive cycle of chaos that emerges from the NCAA's insistence that college athletes play for free. And the investigation I've been building in that time spilled onto the world stage at the 2016 NFL Draft.
The NFL Draft is like lights, camera, action time. This is my athletes coming out party to the world. Mom and dad are cleaned up, everybody looks good. That's the moment of validation for every sacrifice that you've made. And it's supposed to set you up for the future in like a big, huge way.
It's like watching these kids that you tracked with since they were 16 and 17 years old finally, publicly get what's due to them, which is the money.
Laremy Tunsil was a surefire plug-and-play left tackle in the NFL. He'd been a superstar at Ole Miss as part of Coach Hugh Freeze's legendary signing class of 2013. He caught a touchdown pass at the Sugar Bowl. As an offensive lineman, it's not even his job to catch the ball.
That was my first touchdown actually in my career, man.
Now he's about to leave Ole Miss and get drafted into the NFL. Getting picked means getting that signing bonus. The higher you're ranked, the higher that signing bonus is going to be. Laremy Tunsil is projected to be in the top 5 picks in round 1 of the draft, as high as number 1. He was looking at $20 million easy.
Guy was going to become an instant millionaire, so it should have been a really happy night for Tunsil.
Then on national television, in front of millions of people, ESPN, NFL Network, he gets sabotaged. There's a video posted from Laremy's personal Twitter account of him smoking weed.
So all of a sudden a video comes out, Laremy Tunsil wearing a gas mask bomb.
I was on my couch, I was watching the draft, I had my phone open on Twitter, second screen, and I looked at it and I was like, no, this is him.
Seeing something like that, the gas mask bomb, the Confederate flag behind him, this large black kid sitting there smoking weed, it pouring out, and it was so charged and so visceral that It was funny, in the moment, it seemed a lot more important than the text messages that followed.
Then there's a screenshot of a text chain posted from his personal Instagram account.
On Tunsil's Instagram, another post. Text messages of Tunsil asking athletic officials at his alma mater, Ole Miss, for rent money.
And you're like, whoa. It's Laremy saying to someone, can I come meet you? It's the other person saying, hey, you know, we need to talk about amounts and we need to talk about prices and all this kind of stuff.
All of a sudden, he's unusable. Other tackles go off the board. Tennessee Titans, they take another offensive lineman. And there's Tunsil. You're actually watching this human being react to his NFL dreams collapsing, and we're seeing it in real time.
A stunning revelation that cost a top prospect millions.
It sent Tunsil's fortunes plummeting on live TV.
Laramie was supposed to get picked in the top 5. Now he's watching player after player get picked, and his draft rank starts to drop.
We continue to monitor this free fall of Laremy Tunsil. The Ravens took Tunsil off the board.
Every team, millions, 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 millions lost.
But this clearly changed some teams' evaluation of him. I'm also told that he passed all of his drug tests at Ole Miss.
One of the weirdest moments of my life. And I wasn't involved. I wasn't the one, you know, using a bong made of a gas mask. I'm talking to teams in their war rooms. I'm talking to owners. What do you think? How bad is he falling? You know, what's this gonna mean?
All over colleges in America, kids are smoking marijuana, making videos. This really cost him.
It's now almost 2 hours since Tunsil's accounts were hacked, and he's still waiting on live TV for one of the teams to pick him. We're now in the 13th pick. That's an $8 million free fall. And then somebody finally makes a move.
Miami Dolphins select Laremy Tunsil, tackle, Ole Miss.
Ole Miss, the NCAA, and the NFL all got busted on live TV for millions of people to mock and meme endlessly. The collegiate athletic system had one job: to deliver star college athletes like Tunsil to the professional stage. And what the NFL got handed was a highly public scandal. If you're the NCAA, this is an unprecedented amount of exposure. And it's imperative, if you're gonna defend your validity as the guardian of the game, that you find out who the bagman was. Let's talk about bagmen. Over the course of this investigation, there are 3 that you need to know. The first I started talking to around 2014. That's Bagman X. He's an anonymous source from an anonymous school, and let's just say that school is somewhere in the South. A bagman is an individual associated with a university who compensates a prospective student athlete or a current student athlete to play for their school. College football recruiting relies on bagmen with no formal school affiliation because players want money, and paying players is forbidden by the NCAA.
The guy that gets you $200 here and there, $500 for a light bill, $1,000 for maybe a car note, and your part of the process as bagman is getting the best players into school and incentivizing them to come over other schools.
On one call with a bagman, my source handed the phone to him at a party so I wouldn't have his number. The whole point of being a bagman is to not get caught. How do you get someone who does something that's illegal by NCAA standards to talk about how they do it, why they do it? So do you know what the hardest thing for a rich white man to do is? Shut the fuck up.
Hello? Hey, Steven. Keep up with it now.
It took me years of cultivating a relationship off the record. No notes, no recording before the guy would open up. He's extremely paranoid and insists that his voice be distorted to shield his identity. That's because the things that he knows could destroy the athletic program he's trying to help.
If there was ever a complete history of these kind of deals made public, you'd be astonished how often you spend money on a kid, even right up to the week or the night before.
They call it dropping bags on signing day eves.
In theory, if you're doing a good job with the bagman, they're not gonna confirm it. People don't notice, or people can't prove it.
If you're asking me specifically, was Laremy Tunsil paid? I don't know. If you're asking me specifically if Laremy Tunsil received benefits to go to Ole Miss, my assumption is probably.
I wouldn't be surprised if at every university in the Southeastern Conference, kids were receiving inducements and illegal benefits.
I think there's this inherent assumption that regardless of what school you're at, if you're going to sign the super elite kids, that some sort of cheating, whether or not you know about it, is going on.
But no one will admit it, and if these practices became public, it would jeopardize the school's standing with the NCAA. The National Collegiate Athletic Association. All the schools rolled up into one faceless institution that regulates all of college sports. Their complete lack of transparency can seem sinister, but more than anything, they're ridiculously ineffective at doing their jobs. Let's think of NCAA enforcement as the cops in this scenario, right? They don't really carry a gun and they barely have a badge. They have no subpoena power, they can't detain you, but they still have this ability to scare the crap out of athletic directors and coaches because it affects their careers.
The NCAA is a kangaroo court, so they're kind of like, oh, I guess we're gonna do something about this now.
If the district attorney sends you a subpoena and you gotta turn everything over, you don't, you go to jail. They don't have the kind of voluntary association. They don't have the same enforcement power.
It seems like nearly everybody cheats. It's more a matter of who's getting caught this week. And when violations are discovered, there can be significant consequences for those involved. The college football that you and I know and love would not benefit from being completely honest. And the college football that you and I both know and love wouldn't exist if everyone was playing by the rules. The best thing for college football is to uphold an illusion of a process, to uphold an illusion of enforcement. And that's what the NCAA is for. The NCAA rules that athletes can't be paid essentially created the bagmen. And sometimes the bagmen resent the NCAA as much as they resent rival bagmen from other schools. As I started to investigate the latest NCAA scandal, I came in contact with a second bagman. Let's call him Bagman Y. He had some things he wanted to get off his chest.
You know, it's going to come out, whether it's a month from now, a year from now, or 2 years from now. You know, it sure would be nice to tell the truth of what's going on.
These practices have been kept under wraps for a long time, but they all started to boil to the surface a few years ago at my alma mater, the University of Mississippi, commonly known as Ole Miss. National Signing Day, February 2013. It's 3 years and counting until Laremy Tunsil's draft night. And Ole Miss head coach Hugh Freeze is trying to build this football program from obscurity into a real powerhouse. Hugh Freeze, this guy is a Christian celebrity.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your goodness to us. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. He's just an old-timey Baptist from Senatobia, Mississippi.
You don't cuss.
Who, at every chance he gets,
you don't drink,
will espouse Christian theology, ideology. He's the guy with the Bible verse on Twitter every morning, right?
So what are your vices?
I have been known to chew a bit of tobacco when watching film.
So Hugh Freeze takes over the program. It's now his second year as head coach. No real prospects, minimal talent, and then he does what you have to do to survive in the SEC now, which is recruit. College football programs find out the results of their recruitment on signing day, when players announce their official picks.
National Signing Day has become its own kind of parallel to the draft in an odd way. So it's broadcast now. There's this whole theater around, you know, kids revealing which school they're going to sign with. There's a lot of drama leading up to it.
Signing day rolls around in February 2013, and suddenly this quaint, small-town program, Ole Miss, which is surrounded by top SEC schools in every state, has the best players in the nation just lining up.
Robert Kimdiche, just a freak of a player.
He's being recruited by everyone. Alabama, USC, Michigan.
Ole Miss.
Robert Kimdiche signs for Ole Miss. Laquan Treadwell, one of the best receivers in the entire country from Crete, Illinois.
University of Ole Miss.
Laquan Treadwell, he signs with Ole Miss too. Then Laremy Tunsil shows up from Florida, and that's when things are starting to look too good for Ole Miss.
Occasionally there's these kids who just say, in 3 years, you're a millionaire in the draft. Tunsil was one of those kids. He was 6'5½". His wingspan was ridiculous. Everybody knew he was a stud. He was the clear #1 offensive tackle in that class, and everybody wanted him.
For a school like Ole Miss to have 3 top recruits signed to them was extremely abnormal. Their program was never a recruiting powerhouse.
They were getting some unusually talented football players. There was this eruption in the college sports world. You know, what the hell's going on there?
Ole Miss athletics was already being watched closely by the NCAA because of smaller 2012 violations around track and women's basketball. With violations already in the news, fans across the internet constantly accuse the school of cheating.
Something does look fishy, there's no doubt.
When Ole Miss gets those kids, people bitch to the NCAA. So the NCAA says, we're gonna check it out.
The NCAA doesn't really show up like the cavalry. They just sort of quietly peer. Enforcement had shown up on campus to investigate allegations related to the track and field program and women's basketball. So by the time Hugh Freeze is even hired, there's already an investigative body. The enforcement team is already here.
In the NCAA's confusing process of investigating alleged infractions, if you have one case from 2012 open, you don't have to open a new investigation. You just have to expand the case to include new allegations. In a signing day press conference, Freeze is getting hammered with questions about the controversy.
Hugh, I'm curious, were you surprised by some of the vague accusations about your success in recruiting?
I was really shocked.
Hugh Freeze chooses to outwardly challenge pretty much anybody, the NCAA, rival schools, rival fans, God, everybody, to find something wrong with his program by sending out that
Legendary, famously ill-advised, foreboding tweet that if anyone had any complaints or any issues with how Ole Miss recruited, that they should contact compliance.
The tweet was stupid.
Whenever you invite someone to do something, you leave yourself pretty exposed.
Hugh, what are you doing? What are you doing making that statement? Because the sharks are already circling.
It's the dumbest move that you can make because you're angering the people who can investigate you, and you're weaponizing the people that want to see you investigated.
And so what that does is basically sends a middle finger out to the NCAA enforcement staff. The one man willing to accept Freeze's challenge is Mike Sheridan, the NCAA's lead investigator on the case. He's as much of a mystery as the rest of the NCAA. Few pictures seem to exist of him online, aside from a handful of tweets like this one.
So Mike Sheridan is the guy who becomes the boogeyman. He becomes the guy that everyone in these quiet, private circles of influence and power around the university and around the program, they're kind of scared of, or they're a little wary of. And so he's the first person, to most people, that goes and starts to look at what's going on at Ole Miss.
Well, Mike Sheridan shows up on campus and has some sort of an altercation with Hugh Freeze. I talked to Hugh Freeze about this one time. I said, so what happened? Well, it didn't go well. His exact quote to me was, I wanted to stomp a mud hole in his ass. The relationship changed. The proceedings from that point forward were completely different. They were personal.
The NCAA's method of investigation is completely arbitrary. They can choose to investigate or interview anyone they want, for any reason, at any time. This opens the door for personal grudges to influence an investigation, and that's exactly how Laremy Tunsil gets dragged into this mess. What falls apart for Laremy Tunsil and for Ole Miss is a guy named Lindsey Miller, his stepfather. Lindsey Miller has bigger aspirations than just being Laremy Tunsil's would-be stepfather. He wants to be involved in his NFL future.
Lindsey Miller enters Laremy's life at a part where it's right about time for Laremy to cash in. But if I'm Laremy, who the hell is this guy?
This is a guy who has been described to me on multiple occasions by multiple people as a shitbird, as we say in the South.
June 2015, Tunsil's last year at Ole Miss. It's less than a year to go until his big shot at the NFL draft. Police respond to a domestic violence call at the home of Lindsey Miller, Laremy's stepfather. Reports emerge. Laremy's mom was pushed, Miller was yelling and cursing at her. He pushes Laremy Tunsil, and that doesn't go over too well. Now TMZ Sports is showing the aftermath. Miller denies the allegations, sues Tunsil in court, and files a restraining order. Tunsil sues back. Hugh Freeze issues a statement of support for Laremy, and small-town gossip becomes this national scandal.
Lindsey Miller tries to represent himself in court, and it fails miserably. So instead, he goes directly to the NCAA. He's got information he'd like to share about Tunsil taking money at Ole Miss. And the NCAA leaps on Lindsey Miller.
So, should be right here. This is where the cops get called. There's a physical altercation at this house. What the argument originated from was Miller was trying to steer Tunsil's career in one direction with one set of agents. Tunsil was out talking to other people and it was a matter of who was going to control Tunsil's career from this point on.
Miller says he was trying to guide Laremy responsibly, but after the fight, he goes right to the NCAA to tell them things that directly obstruct Laremy's career.
This is the falling out moment. This is the moment in which Lindsey Miller goes from being this guy who's sort of in Laremy's camp to someone who makes moves to work against Laremy Tunsil's well-being and his future.
So this brings us back to where we started, with Laremy Tunsil on draft night. 3 of Hugh Freeze's star players from that fateful year are about to get drafted to the NFL.
It was going to be a really big night for his program. You knew Tunsil was going in the first round, Treadwell was going in the first round, Kimdichie was going in the first round.
At this point, the video and the text messages on Laremy's account seem to be the big story of draft night. That is, until Laremy sits down for his post-draft interview.
How do you feel?
I'm good, man. I'm excited just to be in this position. Laremy didn't do many interviews. He didn't sit down and talk to media much.
Have you seen the Instagram photos that are out there on your account?
He wasn't prepared for what was coming, but he probably thought he was.
Was there an exchange of money between you and your coach as your Instagram photos?
No, I wouldn't say all that. I wouldn't say that.
Were you surprised at how far you fell?
It's 3 minutes and 36 seconds. I asked him, Laremy, did you take money from coaches? I had to say yeah.
And that admission is what the NCAA had been looking for to tear Ole Miss apart.
And then secretary comes in.
He's got no more comments. I'm sorry. Thank you guys so much.
It's the story of the draft. And you're like, oh my God, the whole program's going down. At that moment, I didn't think Hugh Freeze would survive the night.
So how do we answer the question of who went after Laremy?
TMZ Sports and Robert Condici are speculating that it's Lindsey Miller.
Laremy, brush it off, dog. I love you. I don't care about all that.
You think it was a stepfather? Because stepfather denied it.
It could be, man.
Who's doing this?
It boils down to 2 sort of theories on this. Lindsey Miller or somebody else, right? CNN has the most common theory that it's the stepfather, Lindsey Miller. Fox is all over the idea that it's the stepfather.
The stepfather may be the one that leaked this.
ESPN starts to move with the idea, the concept that it's not necessarily Lindsey Miller, that it's the financial advisor.
It's Laremy Tunsil's last season at Ole Miss. A prospective financial advisor reportedly gives him a phone. You're busy right now, Laremy. I tell you what, you give me your iCloud password, we'll get your photos and your apps and everything set up. You don't have to worry about it. Now suddenly he has his iCloud storage, he has his photos, videos, and he has his text messages.
9 times out of 10, when these athletes get to a certain level, when they make it to the pros and they get drafted, they try and weed out a lot of these people from their lives who preyed upon them when they were at a disadvantaged point. I've seen extensive evidence that indicates the source of the hack was a vengeful financial advisor. Laremy didn't stick with him when he went pro, and so this guy retaliated on draft night to cause maximum damage. But I can't prove it, because no criminal investigation was ever filed to catch the hacker. The NCAA's rules mean that if a college athlete wants to make any money, they have to go underground. That leaves them susceptible to bagmen, to questionable advisors, and anyone around them with an axe to grind. This is the new reality for who you trust, and the new reality for what can happen if you're a star college athlete. Throughout the investigation, Lindsey Miller became less and less of a credible source. The NCAA went back to Lindsey Miller after draft night. They tried to find more that they could charge Ole Miss with, specifically related to Laremy Tunsil. They couldn't find anything that would work. They're waiting for Hugh Freeze to screw up. Their case on Tunsil is shaky at best, and they need a new witness.
Who am I? I'm Leo Lewis.
So Leo Lewis is the #1 rated inside linebacker of his class.
Poor kid from a poor town. His dad's in jail, he's got a 1-year-old daughter.
Leo starts talking to Barney Farrar, the same Barney that was mentioned in Laremy Tunsil's hacked text messages from draft night. Barney works for Hugh Freeze.
There he is, right there.
That's Barney. Say what's up.
And though Barney will later deny this, according to NCAA documents, he introduces Leo to the second bagman in my investigation, Bagman Y.
What is Ole Miss going to have to show you from here on out to maybe get you in the end?
To be honest, I really couldn't tell you.
And then one day in a parking lot in Brookhaven, Leo Lewis goes to meet his bagman. The bagman hands Leo a stack of $100 bills, totaling $10,000. Leo needs to commit to Ole Miss. The NCAA has been waiting and watching, and they see everything. What you're seeing in the South today is a flawed, biased system These kids at 17, 18 years old are risking their bodies and minds to play a game for our entertainment for nothing. What we're going to show is a culture built on billions of dollars that will lie to itself and the public to protect a system that punishes the labor force for receiving a single dollar. It's also about how impossible it is for kids like Laremy Tunsil and Leo Lewis to survive the NCAA experience without suffering for it.
All these players become victims in this whole deal.
This story is an insane journey through the underground market that sustains college football. After 5 years, I still have more questions than answers. What drives these rival institutions to an endless cycle of bribery and deception? Who is responsible for the ruin of coaches and players year after year? And why does the cutthroat world of Mississippi football go to war over Leo Lewis? I can tell you this, it ends terribly for everyone involved.